Sphero, and you'll have to forgive me if things aren't perfectly smooth today. I'm actually working from a hotel room because I'm traveling for a conference right now. So I don't have all my normal fun gadgets to change all kinds of cameras and things like that. So bear with me if it takes me a moment to transition between things today. So just real quick, how many of you, just a quick show of hands on your camera there, how many of you have actually used Indie so far? All right. So, yeah, a bunch. Awesome. Awesome. So, we understand the concept of the color tiles, the robot itself, getting this thing moving, how it works. So, I'll go through a real brief refresher on that, but I'll keep it real short for that. All right. Let's take a look here at storytelling. And there we go. Okay. As I mentioned, my name is Brad Fessler. My contact info is right there. Feel free if you have any questions about anything we talk about today or anything Sphero related, feel free. I can't help you with sales, but I'll gladly help you in support for the classroom and finding activities and things like that. Just real quick, Indie is designed for our youngest learners, right? It can be a totally screenless play and learning environment. And the magic of this is that little onboard color sensor. And this thing is super engaging. Um, I just did a training 2 days ago, and I had educators from first year educators to someone that was in their last year of teaching. They were looking forward to retirement, and they were working on solving an indie challenge card. And at the end of it, they all did the same thing that all of our students do as well. And the arms are in the air and they're woohoo, they're celebrating, right? Just a lot of fun. So I always say it does not matter if you're 4 years old, 60 years old, or anywhere in between. It's all the same reaction when you solve one of these challenges. It's just really fun and engaging. So, as most of you indicated that you've used this, you probably experienced that a little bit with some students. And if you haven't, get into a classroom and do this so you can see what happens there because it is really a lot of fun. The whole concept is we want to support our students with computational thinking, right? Those 4 pillars of computational thinking, we want those students to, develop those good problem solving skills using that framework. Even if they don't know what all those pieces are, we want them developing those skills. And that's really, really important. One of the other things I like to point out here is we want our students to be able to use their imagination and also this word play that is like kind of a stigma sometimes in the classroom. We're like, no, no, Brad, we don't play with anything. We're learning, right? We learn a lot of things by sitting down and playing with it, right? Like that's just what we do. I've made a whole career out of that, right? Like hand me a device, figure out what it does. Okay, that's what I do. Cool. How can we use this in the classroom? Or what do I want to teach in the classroom? How can I make something that's going to help me teach that, right? So just by sitting down and playing around with things, we want our students to be able to do that as well. That's a really important skill. All right. So these tiles, these fun little silicone tiles, or if you have one of the at-home kits, they might be a cardstock tile. I actually have a cardstock tile here that I'll show you. It looks like this, right? It's the same kind of thing. It's just cardstock. It's not quite as durable as those silicone ones are. And the reason I point that out, even though you probably have class packs that have all those silicone tiles in them, in each student kit, there are extra tiles that are zipped into the lid of your class pack. So the black bag that everything comes in, there's a zipper in the lid that there's a pocket in there. And inside of there, we have extra stickers. We have extra tiles, but they're the cardstock kind of tiles, not the silicone ones. There's also the educator guide, and that's where that little thing is hiding. It took me a little while to find that, so I like to point it out to everyone so that if you haven't found it, that's really, really helpful to get all kinds of different curriculum ideas. While we're talking about those stickers, right? These little sticker sheets that are in there, don't I know I've heard a lot of teachers, they like immediately take these out and they don't let the students have them, right? The cool part about these stickers are they are reusable, right? So they're easy peel stickers. They come right off of the robot. Or if you step away to talk to, another teacher, or someone else, and a student takes this and decides they're going to decorate the screen on your laptop or your smart board or your cell phone, don't worry, they'll peel right off and it's not a big deal. You can see I have my Indie decorated here, right? Got all kinds of fun stickers on there because it's just fun to do that. One thing I will point out is there are some round stickers on the sheets, right? They are designed as like little hubcaps, right? That can go on there. But students see a round sticker and then they look at the bottom of Indie and they get that little round sensor that's on the bottom and they go, that's perfect. That's where that one goes, right? And then Indy doesn't work anymore because Indy can't see the tile, right? So if you ever set Indy on green and it doesn't do anything, there's two things to check. Make sure that the sensor is not blocked and that it's clean and that the power is turned on, right? If Indy's not turned on, it's not going to read that green tile. So we're talking about those tiles here, what they all do here. So green is go. You see here, there we go. Go or go faster. Indy has those 3 speeds. Once you hit the top speed, Indy will not go any faster. So if you took a bunch of student kits and laid like 18 green tiles in a row, Indy's not going to go faster every time. Once it hits that top speed, it's just going to keep going at that top speed. Our next one is yellow, and that's going to slow it down. And just like putting a bunch of greens in a row, putting a bunch of yellows in a row is not going to make Indy crawl. It's going to go to that lowest speed, and it's just going to stay at that lowest speed and keep going. Red is stop, or as I like to call it, the boring stop. Because once students find purple and that it is celebrate or the fun, exciting stop, they don't want to use red anymore because it's boring, right? They want to do the fun stop that makes Indy spin around and do those kinds of things. So if you're then transitioning at some point for let's add in the app to things and configure tiles, red's a great choice to change what red does because students don't want to use it anymore once they figure out purple. Then down the right side of this slide, we have pink for 90 left, blue for 90 right, orange for 45 left, and teal for 45 right. So quick trick on how I remember these. We have warm and cool colors. Pink and orange are warm, blue and teal are cool. Whenever you're debating with someone about whatever topic it might be, we want to be the one that's right. So it's cool to be right. And Indy thinks that too, right? So when it sees those cool colors, it turns right. So that's how I remember them. It's cool to be right. All right. So let's get to some of that content. So learning how to solve challenges and using those challenge cards, which are really fun, that's great. But what if I want to go further? What if I want to start bringing in art and ELA, those kinds of concepts into here? We can do a storytelling activity. And I'm actually going to ask you to do part of this storytelling activity here today, just to play around with it, see how it works, and then maybe share out some of the things that you're able to do. And I know this is a short time, so it's okay if you don't get through it all, or if you don't have your indie, work through it, think about how you could do this, use this time to maybe build an example that you'll be able to use in your classroom for this. So for the storytelling activity, we want our students to come up with a favorite story, or maybe you already have a story that you use in your class and you just use indie as another cool, engaging way to teach this same kind of story that's already in there. So take that story and transform indie into your main character. Have your students create set pieces, decorate indie to create that story and really kind of bring the viewer into the story. It now becomes interactive, which really brings it to life for students. They might pick a section of the story, or maybe it's the entire story itself, right? And everybody's doing a different story. Just depends on the classroom setting, how you actually want to use indie for this. Are we focused on a specific story and each person is doing a different, or each group is doing a different scene, or maybe everybody's doing different stories completely. They're going to use indie to tell that story. So, an example, and we'll see a video of an example later. A lot of people, when I do this in professional development, say they want to do the Three Little Pigs, right? So, the Three Little Pigs story, right? Indy becomes the big bad wolf. Indy runs through the straw house and continues on, right? And then Indy runs through the house made of sticks and continues on. But when it gets to the house made of bricks, it stops because it cannot run in through that brick wall, right? So you can kind of get those different set pieces in there, the different behaviors of Indy in there as well, while telling the story. So the cool part about this is you can actually take this same activity and really age it up or age it down depending on your students and your students' abilities here. So some possible challenges you can add into this: have the students reuse a tile, right? So their path has to cross back over the other path. Or maybe it's an entire loop where the story repeats itself, so the path needs to repeat itself. You can then say it has to have a certain number of turn commands, right? So if you're talking about pre-K students, right, it maybe only has to have 4 or 5 turns. If you're talking about second graders doing this, maybe it needs to have 8 or 10 turns throughout that story, right? But it really gets the students thinking not only about the turns that Indy has to make, but the sections of the story, the scenes themselves throughout. Then also, there is a way to make Indy pause. And it's kind of interesting. It's a little bit of a hack, maybe, right? But you take that purple tile, Indy finishes on the purple tile, right? But if you have green kind of overlapping that, so Indy sees the purple tile, starts to celebrate, but when it's spinning around, it ends up sitting on green. Green's gonna make it start again, right? Now, the one thing to think about is when that happens is where is Indy actually going to be facing, right? Could be an interesting thing that happens. The other part is change out the purple for a red and again have them overlapping. When it hits the red, it's going to stop, but that takes a little bit of time. So it might overshoot a little bit, which it should, and it's going to hit green, and then it's going to start that countdown again to get it moving. So that's one way to add in an automated pause. Your students could run right into red or purple and then have a green tile sitting right next to it. They can pick up Indy, set it on the green tile to add that pause to their story as well. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a few minutes. I want you to figure out a story that maybe you already use in your classroom or a story that you would expect your students to want to tell here and kind of figure out what that path might look like. Maybe you take your kit and build your path. If you have some craft kind of supplies sitting there, papers, some tape, whatever you have laying around there that's available, build a set piece or two to work on your story. And when we get to the last few minutes, we'll kind of share out what we built here. Anyone have any questions? All right. I will hang on here. So if you do have any questions while you're kind of building out your story, please feel free to unmute or throw them in the chat, and I'll address them and help you out. So let's take a few minutes and go ahead and build out that story. Mrs. Miles, that's a great question. How much does it affect Indy to put pictures on top of the tiles? That's a great question. So Indy uses that color sensor, right? So anytime we put something other than those colors in there, Indy's not going to read it, right? So what I would recommend is you do this three-dimensionally, right? So if you have that color tile sitting there, right? Indy's going to drive over the color tile, and you want that image to sit there. You're prop it up, right? Like a little bit of an easel or something that's sitting here in that way. And then it's the same thing for the storytelling kind of activity. We don't want to modify the tile itself. We want to have things that are sitting around that tile to kind of illustrate what we're trying to show for students. But that's a great question. We have experimented a little bit with the silicone tiles and using a dry erase marker and actually writing like in the margins of the tile. I will say this: we don't specifically endorse doing that. I have tested it myself with a dry erase markers, like a bunch of different colors. What happens? And it does come off of here. You can just take a cloth and just rub it a little bit. It comes right off of there. The longest I have let anything on there, I've let something on there for about a month, and it still came off of there. That being said, we don't warranty a tile that we've, somebody has written on, especially if you maybe mess up and use a permanent marker or something on there, it's not going to come off. We also, if you're going to do something like that, make sure it's in the margin of the tile and not on the color part of the tile, because the color part of the tile, when you modify that color, Indy's not going to see the correct color anymore.
Thanks. Yeah, I actually found with my kids that the paper tiles worked better than the other ones because I could scotch tape them to the to a paper mat on the table. Because I have pre-kindergarten, but I have threes and fours. And so the 3-year-olds, the other ones, I was like, it's supposed to stick. How do you get it to move so much?
Yeah,
Just them being wiggly, but they really did enjoy it.
that's awesome. So something to note there in the lid
Yeah.
of the class pack in the bag, there is in the sticker pack in that bag with all the stickers in it. There's these little white stickers. They're like kind of rectangles, I think, if I remember correctly. Those are designed to be able to peel off and use them on the corner of the cardstock tiles to hold that down. So just FYI, there is something in there to help you with that if you need it. Also, if students are having an issue with aiming things or things like that, we have one product that's out there already that you can. We give the plans for it away. You have to actually go make it, but we give the plans for it away. Called the Indi Garage, right? And it's this little thing. I have mine stuck to a cardstock tile because I need to travel with mine all the time. So I just use little command strips
Mm-hmm.
on the cardstock tile and on my Indi Garage to attach this to my tile. And it is designed so that you can set your green tile in place, attach the corners, right? Donut a tape on the back, whatever you need to do. And Indy fits right inside of that garage, nice and neatly. And Indy will be aimed the right way. So you can see Indy doesn't really move around in here. So this is set in place. The students always have that aim correct to get it going. The other thing that we have to help with the aiming portion there is coming soon. I don't know the exact date yet, but it is called the Indie Code Mat. And on one side of it is just a grid that these tiles fit perfectly on. So it helps students get them aligned straight and they're not laying all over the place and not lined up. And then the other side, when you flip it over, is Indie Land, and Indie Land has a bunch of different locations on it to show different activities. So we can do um, all kinds of language arts kind of activities. There's sentence structure, there's spelling activities. It actually comes with 2 decks of cards. They look like playing cards, but they have letters and words on them, so that you can, work with students to build out those sentence structures as well. That's coming. I'm gonna say, don't quote me on this, but probably in the next few months you'll see that rolling out on our website. But the Indie Code Mat will be there.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. Great question. All right, we'll give everybody about 5 more minutes to finish up those stories, and then we'll share out what we have. I'll show you a couple examples that I have here on video as well, and then talk about a few other indie activities that are out there and wrap up our session. So, about 5 more minutes. All right. Kind of bring it back together here. I know this isn't a whole lot of time to be able to do this kind of an activity, but I want to make sure I provide enough time for questions and talk about some other activities that are out there to work with indie. So Is there anyone that would like to share what they came up with? If you got a chance to build something, that would be awesome. Wendy, thanks.
I originally, before you even said Three Little Pigs, I was like, oh, Three Little Pigs. But because you said that, I was like, okay, I can't do that. So I thought about Rosie's Walk, the story about the chicken who leaves the coop and she goes around the yard and she goes across the yard, around the pond, over the haystack, past the mill. And so having those things and then having the kids make her path, I thought that would be really cute.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. I love it. And some things that you can build there for set pieces. What do you have in mind?
So I mean, because it's like over the haystack, building like maybe just a little kind of ramp that Indy could go over,
Yeah,
and then have a little mill, like use just some boxes with pictures on them, and even like cut one out so that Indy would go under it. Like I think that kind of thing. Because normally when I do Rosie's Walk with pre-K, I actually have big pictures and the kids actually do the activities. So, but just now having Indy do it, so have smaller little things for him to go under and over, and because one's under the beehives through the fence, so have a little fence he could go through. Just have all of those set pieces, and I have a big carpet that's a grid, and that's usually how I teach coding with my kids, like
perfect.
how to, each block is one step, is one thing. So, kind of using that as our grid to do the path, I think would be really cool.
Yeah, that sounds great. That's awesome. I'd love to see, what students come up with to build all those set pieces and what they do. So not only are they learning the art side of things of coming up with those ideas, but they're actually doing some engineering design here, right? As
Yeah.
well. As a former tech ed teacher, that is like near and dear to my heart. So even if it's like, how do we build the ramp, to go over that, or maybe it's a seesaw, right? And as Indy drives up the ramp, then it drops and they keep going. Like you can do some really cool stuff that way. I love the idea. That's awesome. Thank you. Anyone else have anything they would like to share? Okay, Mrs. Miles is sharing in the chat. So the math bears in a cave, cut the opening in a paper bowl. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, all right, we can see it. Yeah, this is awesome. I love it. Yeah, that's a great idea. So since you're dealing with the PK3 students, they're working with a pre-made path to answer those questions and have them build the rest of that on their own. It's a great idea. It's a great way to kind of scaffold it for the students there and help them with that. Great. Anyone else have anything they want to share?
I went off the idea of the Three Little Pigs as well. And as a first grade teacher, when we do our primary talent development, we build the house for Pig 4. So what would be the path to get from the brick house of the Three Little Pigs to the house of Pig 4? So it ties into our primary talent development. When you said Three Little Pigs, I was like, oh. And so that's another way we can kind of represent these kids on the PTD scale when we're doing their portfolios in first grade.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. I and Samantha just threw that in there. Like that's a great connection. And one of the things I like doing in these sessions is like having everyone share what, because it sparks that creativity that in everyone to like, oh yeah, we can make this connection and we can do that connection. So I really appreciate everyone jumping in and sharing. I also saw Jody posted in there about the very hungry caterpillar, have Indy eat the different foods. I actually saw a similar idea here with Indy in an in-person professional development one time, where they wanted to teach the life cycle of the caterpillar into the butterfly, right? So they took Indy, had Indy decorated, right, and went through the life cycle. And the last part, Indy drove through a tunnel and had this little pipe cleaner hook that was attached to the spoiler, right? And when it came out of the tunnel, that little hook grabbed a hold of the butterfly cutout that they made, and it dropped right on top of Indy, right? And then Indy became the butterfly, right? Which is just really, really cool. To, you know, again, they're bringing in the art, the science, the storytelling aspect of this, as well as bringing in, again, the engineering design process there at an age appropriate level. So you can do some really, really awesome stuff. So I really appreciate everyone contributing there and throwing out ideas. There's awesome ideas there. Let's see, the last one that popped in the chat here. Recently used robots to have students play a board game where they had to move the submarine robot around to collect treasure as they moved around, but had to avoid the dangerous sea creatures. I love it. That's really cool. You can be super inventive of ways to utilize indie to do some really, really cool kind of games and things like that. Something else that I want to point out just on the concept of a board game kind of style thing here is when you turn indie on, that little logo that's on the top here, we call that a light pipe, but that lights up with whatever color indie sees. So let me grab a tile here from my set. So I'm going to put Indy on a tile that's not green to start, because green's going to make it count down and then go. But if I put Indy on, say, this blue tile, Indy's going to light up blue, right? And if I took a pink tile here, I put Indy on the pink tile, Indy's going to light up pink, right? So you could set up a board game, and even though Indy wouldn't travel in this, when they set Indy on the tile, it's going to light up that color. The only thing you have to be careful of with that is make sure you don't use green, because if you use green, Indy's going to start driving, right? So just a cool creative way to use that color sensor and get students to think about the pattern recognition part of computational thinking here. So really cool. Thanks for sharing, everyone. It's awesome. So let's take a look at a couple examples here that we have, and hopefully the audio comes through on this. We do here.
We did the tortoise and the hare. All right. So, as you know about the story, the hare is a little full of himself, and the tortoise is a nice humble pie guy. And they're going to start the race. And Rabbit sees that he can go faster, and he takes a rest near the trees. And then Rabbit realizes, I better get my act in store if I'm going to win this race.
So in this case, they're doing the tortoise and the hare, and using two indies because we have two main characters here. So they have the little set pieces here. They have different paths. And actually in this one, they actually had a little mistake that happened in the little green tile here. The tortoise accidentally ran through the tree instead of turning like it was supposed to, right? But students will have those same kinds of mistakes when they lay out these things. So it's really cool for them to then troubleshoot that, right? If we're thinking about the coding world, right, they're debugging their code when they're doing this to figure all those things out. So that was a cool example that we saw some educators do.
The big bad wolf and the three little pigs. So our wolf, you can be the star. Okay. So our wolf first goes to the house made out of straw and knocks it over. And bam, it fell over. And then our wolf makes his way to the house made out of sticks and knocks that over. And the pigs run to their last house, which is their house made out of bricks, which the wolf cannot get in. So he throws a temper tantrum and the pigs are safe.
So as we can see, that purple tile can be celebrate or it might be a temper tantrum, right? Just depends on the day and how we're feeling, right? So cool idea there. And actually they were able to, kind of repurpose that purple tile in a different way, right? Even though it's doing the exact same thing, like physically the robot's doing the exact same thing, they kind of portrayed it as something different, right? So just kind of cool things that you can come up with there. I've seen a lot of different examples of different stories in here. These were just two examples that are really, really fun to work through. So, couple different things that we can also do with our storytelling here.
The big bad wolf and the
Oh,
three
we
little
got them all
pigs.
on here.
So
So,
our wolf,
as
you can be the star.
There we go. And some other things that we can think about when we're doing an activity like this. Take the storytelling part out and start doing math, right? So each tile might be a different operator, right? So pluses and minuses, left and right. And now we're doing math problems. So substitute out, the storytelling with numbers and put them in there, right? That's kind of a fun one to do some math practice. You can also bring in other science concepts of like, hey, tell the story of the metamorphosis from the life cycle of that butterfly, right? How does that work? Tell the life cycle of something else, a plant or photosynthesis, right? You can really take this up levels or bring it down to whatever age you're working with. I recently got a chance to visit a classroom out in Colorado and got to see a lesson delivered by an educator who told a story um, in front of the class and then talked about how that story could be told using indi and then had them do this. And the really cool part was, he spent almost an entire class period introducing this lesson to the students, but did it in a really fun, engaging way, right? So he had a bunch of sheets of paper folded together, and as he's telling the story, he's cutting things out, different shapes out of the paper, and then would unfold them different ways to show parts of the story. It was really, really super creative, but delivering those in fun, engaging ways like that really helps to build on the creativity of our students through that. So, with that being said, what kind of questions does everybody have? And if anyone else would like to share something that they've done, even if it wasn't during this session, if you like to share with everybody, please unmute and share or put it in the chat.
This isn't that exciting, but something that I reuse with all the grades is with like first grade, I print out like maybe like the first page of a story, the second page, or the third page, and for differentiation, you do different stories with lots of words, stories with just pictures, and you just have the kids, go retell the story, reorganize it, if that makes sense, from beginning, middle to end with the tiles, so they can go, that's what I do with first grade. So some
Yeah.
students get harder texts with like that are longer, like 10 pages, where some kids maybe get like 3 or 4 pages, but something that I can reuse like next year. I worry sometimes with the materials. It's like, oh, the materials are so, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to start thinking about the structure of a story, right? Of how that works, and you can do the same thing with sentences, right? Like if you want to bring that down to a lower level, that's the sentence structure itself. Yeah, awesome. Thanks for sharing. All right, Miss Hawkins.
Hi, I work with fourth grade, so my students are a little bit older. And I was thinking about possibly using it to track character emotions or the mood or the tone of the story as it changes throughout. So doing some character feelings.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
So bringing in that emotional learning into the
mhm.
classroom as well, which is awesome. Just thinking about ways we can do that, right? So like obviously celebrate's really easy, right? Um, but you can use the red tile, like that can be an emotion, right?
Mhm.
Every different color can be a different kind of emotion, and you might be looking at a path of like how, here's how we feel today, how can we get to where we want to be, right? And thinking about that emotional learning and the steps students have to take to get through those kinds of things, right? So that's an awesome idea, and anytime we can bring some of that emotional learning into the classroom, um, in a very productive way is awesome, because
Right.
students definitely need help with that at times.
And I'm thinking about like the first marking period is narrative writing, and they learn how to write narratives by talking about um, struggles and motivations. So I could see like they can pinpoint a part of the story where they have, the movement represent a struggle, the movement represent a motivation, and just kind of like identify those different components of the story.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. So that's a similar concept to the one of the challenges we did in the Sphero Global Challenge a few years ago. We did Indy Goes to the Zoo, right? And we have Indy, they have to program Indy to represent an animal, right? So what is the behavior pattern of that animal, right? So the lion might be walking back and forth, right? Kind of pacing, right? Um, in its pen versus, a different animal will have that different pattern. So they have to like think about how does that animal react. And here they're just bringing in that human element, which is really, really pretty cool. I love the idea. I love it. That's great. A couple things while we have a few minutes left. I talked about the indie garage, right, and some of the other resources that are out there. So I want to show you, where do we find those particular resources here. So when you go to Sphero.com, up here at the top, we have lessons and resources, that tab. And if you click on Sphero Indie, there's all kinds of resources that are in here. There's an explanation of how Indie works, the colors, different things that are out there for you. And as you scroll down, whether you click on a button to jump to something directly, or you scroll down straight through this to see everything, you can find all these different resources in here. So I talked about that educator guide earlier. If you're a person that doesn't like to deal with the printed book, or maybe there's something in there that you want to use in a presentation, take a screenshot of maybe, right? There's a PDF of the book. It's right here. It's free to download. Grab that and you can throw some things in there. Also, we have downloadable versions of the challenge cards that are here, as well as the DIY challenge card. When you click on this, it takes you to a Google Slides presentation where it gives you all the resources to make your own challenge cards. They are drag and drop kind of components. You could then share them, print them. There's even templates that you can print and provide to your students to make their own challenge cards to share with their classmates. So that's a really cool, fun resource. We've seen that used quite a bit to come up with some really, unique things. We also have some downloadable guides that are here. We have a special education guide as well as a math and literacy guide that's there. We do have webinars from time to time for you to check out. And of course, we talked about that indie garage that is right here. There is a little one pager that you can read about the why and the how of the indie garage. And then, of course, the little STL file here. When you go to that, it will take you to a website called Thingiverse, and you can download this and then print that out. But just also something to note, when you go to Thingiverse, if you search for Sphero, there's all kinds of other accessories for different Sphero products, as well as this little indi bridge that's there. And the indi bridge is really kind of a cool little accessory that, again, you can 3D print, and it just snaps over the top of indi, right? So it sits on top of indi like this. And this particular indi bridge is designed for our blueprint pieces. So you can snap things onto here, building pieces onto here, and build off of this. I do happen to know that someone else, not in Sphero, has created a very similar kind of device like this, but it uses Legos, right? So if you have Legos available in your classroom and you want to bring the engineering design process and those problem solving skills into the mix for you, you can 3D print one of these little bridges. They don't take that long to print. And then it gives you Lego studs on the top to be able to start building out from there. All right. Anyone else have any questions or comments? No? All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for jumping on the call here today. Hopefully you got some ideas, whether they were from me or your peers. I love there were some amazing ideas that were thrown out there. So hopefully you can take some of those ideas and run with them and really get your kids engaged in doing some of this problem solving. I do know that there is a link that's up here in the chat that was posted a few minutes ago